Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, and today we are going to talk about patterns. And we're going to talk about patterns in a little bit of a different way than we have in the past. Really kind of like bringing back our relationship series from earlier this year. This whole year, 2025 so far, really has been a lot about relationships in a lot of ways. And I've had a lot of different guests on the podcasts that have been in some sort of relationship work. And my guest today is also really heavily in this space, really importantly, really impactfully in this space. His name is Craig Perra, and he is the founder and CEO of the Mindful Habit System, a globally recognized coaching framework that empowers men to master self-leadership by transforming destructive habits, poor coping strategies, and internal conflict into discipline, purpose, and power. And before becoming a world-renowned coach, Craig was a high-powered attorney, corporate executive, advising billion-dollar organizations. And his personal crash from addiction, burnout, and self-sabotage really forced him to confront the parts of himself that were running the show. And that led him to develop the Mindful Habit System, which is a science-based process that teaches men how to lead all parts of themselves, especially the ones they hate, toward productive, aligned outcomes. So, Craig, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. It's so important, it's so needed, and you bring such an important and impactful lens and view to this conversation. So, thanks for being here. I would love for you to introduce yourself even further. Like what happened? How are you where you are now from where you started?
How did I get here? I like to say, Hannah, and thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing meeting you, and it is a privilege to be here. I like to say that I have been fired by some of America's finest companies, multi-billion dollar enterprises that do great, great, great at what they do. And that's kind of been my life in a way, Hannah, this contrast between thriving and sabotage. And that pattern continued in my life. And to make a long story short, formal diagnoses, general anxiety disorder, PTSD, bipolar 2, depression, addicted to cigarettes, sex, drugs, porn, Ritalin, the synthetic chemical bath salts. Like throughout my life, there was this contrast between what people saw me working at the fancy law firm, me having the fancy title, the fancy, um, um, the accoutrements of success. But deep down inside, I was rotting from the inside. There are a number of things that put me on this trajectory. I was touched by an older neighborhood boy as a child. I was given up for adoption as an infant, had some challenges like we all do growing up. And I learned to hide, and I learned to lie. I learned to cheat, and eventually, I married my college sweetheart. We just celebrated 27 years. This woman saved my life. Thank you, thank you. But it was dark. I got fired. I moved my family cross country after getting fired from a wonderful job back east because I told a stupid white lie to my boss. There's no room for a lack of integrity in the office of the general counsel. Craig, I had a tuna sandwich for lunch and then I had turkey. You're gone. Like that's how high the standards were. But I'm the comeback kid. I got a better job. I'm now running a $1 billion company's compliance department. Never did that before, Hannah. And within 8 months, that whole thing unraveled. Like, moved my family cross country. Within 4 months, my boss is telling me, "Hey, I don't think you should put that down payment on the house." I hated my job. I started to hate my life. I started to feel trapped. I'm like, "Is this it?" Like I worked all my life, and here I am at the peak of my career and the biggest job of my life. I was miserable. I was depressed. I blame my wife. I blame my kids. They shouldered none of the burden. It was all me. And instead of being an emotionally intelligent person and saying, honey, I can't believe I caused us to move out here. Um, but I'm dying. Like, we got to figure something out. I can't do this. So instead, I took the sabotage route.
Mm.
And literally, I'd gone into work intoxicated. I had, you know, blown up at a coworker, like things completely uncharacteristic of me. To make a long story short, I was fired. I tried to hurt myself. I was hospitalized in the inpatient treatment place, Hannah. I said to myself, I said, I am never coming back to this place. And I don't care if I have to dedicate the rest of my life to self-help. I don't care if I don't make any money enough to survive, hopefully. But if I don't care if I have to dedicate the rest of my life to self-help, I am never coming back to this place. And that's when this crazy idea of helping others began because I saw a lot of gaps. Well, let me stop there before we move on to the next piece. But that really was that low point. It was that low point that solidified in me. I am continuing to do the things that are causing me harm,
Mm.
putting myself in increasingly stressful situations without addressing the reality that I clearly have some problems.
Right.
And that low point forced me to address them.
Mm. That what I'm hearing in that is there was finally a big enough pattern interrupt.
Huge. I've had suicidal ideations before. Prior to this, I'd been diagnosed with depression, been in and out of meetings and therapy for almost 20 years by this point. But I had never tried to hurt myself. This was the first time I tried to check out. Now, thank God it wasn't a full-throated attempt. It was clearly a cry for help, but it was the lowest I had ever been because I'm in an inpatient facility. Like, what the fuck just happened? Like, how did I get here? And it was in that facility, which was okay. It's certainly those aren't the elite treatment centers. Those are the places you go, and they pick you up off the street and, they lock you up for 3 days. But I learned a lot, and it set the trajectory of the rest of my life. When I had this vision, because when I got out of the treatment center, what they told me here, and I got an 8.5 sheet of paper by 11, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that says more therapy and more meetings. And I said, wait a minute, wait a minute. I have been doing that for decades.
Mm.
What if I need something else? And that's what started my journey to ultimately building a supplement, an alternative to traditional recovery and therapy, specifically for men. But it was at that low point that I knew, like, I can't do this. I've done this. I'm going to find another person who's better. I'm going to find someone else, Hannah, who's going to take me deeper into the trauma. If I can just unlock it, go another level deeper, I'll finally be okay. That is a false premise. That
Mm.
is not true for many, many, many people. The model's flawed. No offense. Those big cathartic moments are important, but they're step one. Now,
Yeah.
what do you do with that information? So these were the gaps that I started to see because in my professional background, Hannah, I was in charge of educating the entire company on compliance. So I learned about learning objectives, developmental milestones, metrics, mechanism of change, accountability, redundancy, like all these things that had not been part of my therapy or my meetings in the way that I needed it. I had this crazy idea that I could build a better mousetrap or a better path to freedom. And here we are.
Well, what I'm like feeling in this moment and like the connection that I'm feeling is um this issue of hiding. And you said it, as part of your story, the hiding and the sabotage, right? But I want to kind of focus on the hiding. Because when we talk in relationship, that is what leads to so many other issues, like when we are hiding something, when we feel shame about a thing that we're doing, whatever that habit is or pattern, and we start to do things in order to hide that thing, um, that's part of what gets out of control, right? It's like you have to keep piling on the lies in order to keep the thing hidden that you're trying to obfuscate. And the other piece that before we started recording, we were talking about legacy and that you work with a lot of men who high net worth, have high income, and they're just kind of like hemorrhaging money in different ways, right?
Yes.
That it's not just what are they spending now, but if their relationship, say they're married, if their relationship falls apart, that also is really hard to recover from for some people.
Yes.
And if you don't address the hiding, if you don't address what's going on, right? Like even in death, those things will come to light.
Yes.
The hiding isn't permanent
Yes.
for most people, and it's so much more devastating to find out later, to find out after your parents have died that they were hiding all of these, what they were ashamed of, secrets.
Yes.
And so these two ideas are like floating and flowing for me right now between hiding and legacy. And so I wondered if you could expand
Yeah.
on that a little bit, like what do
Yeah.
you see there?
And I love that you're talking about this, Hannah, because it's very sexy and titillating, and I don't know, but easy to talk about the sex, the drugs, the substances, right? But here's the thing: if you can't lie, you're not doing the drugs, the secrets, and the substances. If we solve the lying problem, the integrity problem, the truth problem, essentially the fear problem, because if I am honest, I will be rejected. And so this leads to nice guy syndrome. And nice guy syndrome is by Dr. Robert Glover. He's the author of the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. People mistake that, oh, like, oh, I'm not being nice. You're not being honest. Right? By not being honest, you're afraid of hurting someone else's feelings. You're afraid of getting in trouble, getting abandoned, getting rejected. So you hide. If you solve the hiding issue, you haven't solved every issue, Hannah, but you've solved a lot, because this behavior doesn't exist without the lying. So I had this crazy idea way back when I'm building a program, I like to come up with stupid ideas or crazy ideas or what would be a fun idea. And one of my fun ideas, which initially was a crazy idea, it's not because I've incorporated a lot of it into my program. But early on, I had this idea of like, let's just focus on the lying. What if we just focused on the root cause issues around the lying, what he or she is hiding from, and create accountability and a framework to address that. Now, there's other things that need to get done. So from a teaching framework, there's more to it, but it's almost everything. It really, and I'm exaggerating a little bit just because I'm having fun talking about this. Um, it's these men who are big and powerful and command authority, big, big, big on the outside, but on the inside and at home, they feel shame, they feel out of alignment, out of integrity, and they feel small. So that contrast, that's actually the contrast I'm looking for when I'm bringing someone on. If it's a little contrast, well, maybe you should go see this guy. You got a big contrast, then that you're my guy, right? Like that, I'm looking for that. And so highlighting that contrast between how big they feel at work, the authority they command. And let me give an example, Hannah. I will never forget this. Mark, this is for you because I know he's listening. Navy SEAL. Okay, we're talking about people who have clients who have been behind the line of fire in enemy territory, shot at. And I'll never forget what this one client said to me. He goes, Craig, I'd rather be in combat than getting yelled at by my wife. And then all the other vets on the call who had combat experience, like, and I went, I don't think I'm ever going to forget this moment. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm ever going to forget this moment because not everybody's been in combat, thank God, but you've been in wars and battles and struggles and challenges, right? Guys listening, they've done those things, but being honest with their wife, terrifying. Getting yelled at by their wife, terrifying. It's because they feel so small. And that's the contrast that leads. See, needs get met reactively, mindlessly, how we were conditioned to meet them, or they get met proactively. These guys are stuck in the reactive phase.
Mm. Ooh, I just heard something recently, even with the like return to work, return to office rather, mandates that especially a lot of men are feeling they're out of their like they're stuck at home where they don't feel powerful. And so they want to go back to the office because that's where, especially in the leadership roles, because that's where people fawn over them. People, do what they say. They're the one in control. And they don't get that at home.
Correct.
And it's been such an interesting social experiment and phenomenon, I guess, over the last several years, because the people who thrive at home, working at home, I'll use myself as an example, and my husband who just got a new job. Literally today, he went in for the first time
Hey,
office.
congratulations.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity. It's a great job. He's really excited. But he has to go into the office 3 times a week. And he hasn't had to go into the office for, I think, since 2017. So 8 years.
Wow.
We've been able, and I had to go into the office for a while through there, but since COVID, basically, like for the last 5 years, we've worked at home together. And it's been wonderful. And he loves it.
Mm,
And it's not right. And it's like, but we've had a lot of time also to work on our relationship and to
yeah.
root out those places where we were hiding things from each other, and in different ways and places for each of us, and come to that place of transparency. And I see you, and I want to be seen by you, and I feel safe with you seeing me, right? All of that. Um,
Mm,
so it's like, oh, it sucks for him to have to go
yeah.
back into the office. And it's an amazing opportunity, and it's perfectly aligned for right now. Um, but to think, that there are people that that want that feeling of power, that they feel small, they don't feel powerful at home, and they need that feeling of feeling powerful. So dragging like everyone back to the office as well. It's like it's very interesting to see
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
sociological question coming up of like, are you happy at home?
Yeah.
Want to be there?
Yeah. Well, and it's, see, you used I mean, you've obviously done the work. Michelle and I have done the work. We try to make each other feel safe. We work to see each other. We're, mindful of when our stories are getting in the way of us connecting. But the truth is, most couples haven't done that work yet. And so the 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 metric that I like guys to use, how powerless do you feel in your relationship? How resentful do you feel in your relationship? The resentment is a measure of that powerlessness because he's keeping score. He doesn't feel significant. He doesn't feel valued. He doesn't feel like the lifestyle that he provides is taken into consideration when, she's, quote unquote, trying to get her needs met in her words, in his words, yelling about this, complaining about that. And so there's that resentment. And that resentment grows, it grows, it grows. And eventually, that guy who's probably in some degree has been on a steady stream of pornography since he was a child, since he was a sweet young boy. So we already have a natural phenomenon where nothing natural about it, but in this case, where there's hiding,
Mhm.
right? That we learn to compartmentalize at a very, very, very young age. And so the porn continues. Maybe he starts his relationship, it dies down, but then there's conflict and then there's challenges. It comes back up. And then what that also does is make it easier to cross other lines. Like there's a massage parlor on virtually every corner in every major city. There, any of these places open after 6 o'clock. I don't want to generalize, but like what massage therapist is doing massages in a sketchy, low lit place at 9 o'clock at night, right? Not too many. Not too many. So you've got that. You've got a hypersexualized society. You've got an AI girlfriend market ballooning to $28 billion by 2028. You've got OnlyFans, one of the most successful sites on the web. The leakage of there's just so many places for it to go, but eventually that porn crosses over into chatting with people, connecting with people, whether they're paying for it. And oh my God, you won't believe the OnlyFans bills that some of these guys rack up. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, Hannah, in some cases. And then they get caught. Now, while they're doing it, they're kind of rebelling against the resentment, rebelling against the control. They're having fun. They're meeting needs. They got this secret life, and it's all, fun and games until they get caught. And then when they get caught, they realize the gravity of the harm. Like, what was I doing? How much did I spend? And the shame is so, 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 so deep. What happens then, though, is that's really a reinforcing of a power dynamic that they already feel they're in. He's even further on the one down. He's even further down here. He's even more powerless, more helpless, lacks autonomy, any sense of respect. So it's a really difficult place to be for those guys who command so much respect and authority here. And then something like this happens, and on the rare occasion, the adult kids find out, or sometimes even the minor kids find out if the partner isn't able to contain it, because you really should keep this stuff away from the young kids, but sometimes things happen. And that guy's at the lowest point of his life now because now he's beginning to lose even though he lost sight of it, what he's always wanted, what he's fighting for, his family, his legacy, everything that's important to him has been shattered.
Mhm.
However, like I love that breakdown because not that I want anyone to experience pain, and obviously I don't mean that. But when you are in that place, you are motivated, you are driven, and you know what if this was a business, if I'm running my business this way, it has to stop immediately. We have to stop the bleeding. We have to get into profit, in this case, love, connection. Um, so it's a really beautiful place to be with these guys at these low because they're so good over here. If you can just bring some of that over here. And by the way, they all fashion themselves men of integrity. They all
Mhm.
pride themselves on their integrity, but they're lying to their wives. And I'll never forget something Hannah, my old boss said to me. This is who fired me. This is well before he fired me. We were talking about a politician that I had to meet on a trip who was running for governor. So he was a powerful man. And he said, Craig, let me tell you something about this guy. He walks in the front door with his wife. He walks out the back door with his mistress. And he looks me dead in the eye, and I'll never forget this. He said, Craig, never trust a man who lies to his wife. If he lies to his wife, he lies to everyone. If he can lie to his wife, he can lie to everyone. And I went, now I wasn't ready to receive that message like I am now,
Yeah.
but I've thought about that almost every day for like 8 years. And you know what? He's got a really damn good point. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, what's stopping him from, as a business person lying to investors, as a politician lying to his constituents, lying to the people around him, right? Like that is like one of the cancers in the breakdown of our social contracts,
Correct.
right? If we don't have integrity in all of our dealings, then yeah, that social trust, that again, the social contract itself means nothing. And what was coming up again, like talking about legacy, talking about that low point. Let's go back to like they're in that point of the breakdown, fully like caught, exposed, the lie, no more lies, right? Because they're all laid bare at that point, and you're in this like really low point. This is where there's so much, I don't want to say potential. It doesn't feel like the right word, but there truly is opportunity to make an actual shift. But it is a crossroads
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
right? Because you can say like I'm the worst, you don't deserve this, like, and let's say it's a husband and wife, and the wife is like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. It's fully her, within her right to say so, right? And have
Yes.
those
Of
feelings.
course.
But there's also the all of the patterns that led to that moment are part of each person at this point.
Yes.
And those patterns are likely going to repeat. If you break your marriage contract, if you decide to get divorced, sometimes that's the best thing for everyone. But at the same time, like you are going to repeat those patterns with the next
Correct.
person. If you do not take that moment to realize everything that led you to this breakdown right here, and you don't heal it.
Yeah, you are so right, Hannah. So right, because I also get the guys in their second marriage. And it is lit. So is anything happening? So the first question I ask those guys is anything happening here happened before in your first marriage? And then they'll always say no. That's the first answer is always no. It's always no. I might be exaggerating a little bit, Hannah, but it's almost always no. But then when you dig a little bit, you see the same patterns: lying, compartmentalizing, a lack of empathy, this fear, and that's what it is. It's fear. It's fear of being judged, fear of being criticized, fear of being rejected, fear of getting in trouble. A lot of guys project, and for you ladies listening, I'm sure this is no surprise to anybody. A lot of men project their mothers onto their wives, and they put her in that role, and some women, you kind of say to yourself, well, I need to be there because if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't take his medication, he wouldn't brush his teeth, he wouldn't go to the doctor. So there's some of these helpful patterns that reinforce that dynamic, but instead of him being able to receive that, he's resentful, he feels controlled, and those are the justifications he uses when he steps out, when
Mm,
he lies.
mm. Yeah, that leads like the thing that was just coming up for me, and that like the other side of the pattern, for that spouse, any gender really would be the caretaking, people pleasing, taking on, like
It,
shouldering more, like, oh, I have to do more than my share, right? So those are also patterns
correct.
that
Correct.
again, like that's going to show up next time.
It will show up next time. And the reason is because see, we're creatures of habit. We're needs-seeking organisms. Everything we do, including the words coming out of my mouth, me reaching to grab my coffee cup, um, when I get off the phone and squeeze my stress ball, and it's all habits. We need habits to survive. We cannot function without them. And what these low points do is give us a wonderful opportunity to examine those habits, figure out what's not serving us, but reprogram.
Yeah.
Reprogram. It's not just what you do, it's how you feel about what you do. I like to say identity equals habits plus belief systems. What you do and how you feel about what you do is who you are. And so when so much of you is reactive, rooted in trauma, hiding, defensive, shame, that's a great opportunity because, again, like you said, Anna, if you don't fix that, if you don't fix that conditioning, if you don't interrupt those patterns and put in place the habits and belief systems to continue to interrupt them, because that's the other big mistake people make. They're looking at a lifelong of self-destructive habits, and they'll interrupt it for a short period of time, but it's not sustainable. And it's life changing. I mean, we're creatures of habit. Everything we do is a habit. And when you learn that, and when you can see those patterns, and when you can interrupt those patterns, your whole life changes because you're now living authentically. You're now truly meeting your needs proactively instead of reactively. You're having those difficult conversations. You're stepping into fear. Most of the time, it's false expectations appearing real anyway. So you're learning how to do that in a way that's enriching your life, bringing that integrity at work to home, leading. One of my favorite words, Hannah, is self-leadership. And it's a term in the professional development leadership space, but it also has special meaning in the internal family systems model, which
Mm.
is a behavior change modality invented by this Dr. Richard Schwartz, which recognizes that, yeah, I do have a part of me that takes over when I'm feeling criticized by my wife. I do have a part of me that takes over at the end of the day when I'm like dying and I need to, escape and calls me to do things I shouldn't do, right? I have a part of me that sometimes gets afraid being honest with people because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And that's the beauty of parts work in this notion of self-leadership is you are leading those parts,
Mm.
not making them go away, not saying some magic words in therapy, not taking, ayahuasca, ibogaine, and we've been surrounded by a lot of those people. 6 months later, they're still having the same challenges because they haven't interrupted the patterns and built a new identity rooted in new habits and new belief systems.
So, what would be one step? What would be one tip that you can give to someone if they're in this
Okay.
moment of like, yeah, how do I do that?
So one, maybe one practical tip and then an in the moment tip. How's that?
Perfect.
So the practical tip is to make a list of your primary bad habits or addictions. So let's say I am lying to my wife about my porn use, so I'm going to write down porn. Number two, I'm going to write, well, it's not just doing it, it's lying about it. I'm going to write down lying. And then number three, I'm going to write down I get angry sometimes. Okay, those are the three things I'll use as a hypothetical. Instead of doing what's typically done in addiction circles, tell me how bad those things are, quantify the impact that those bad things are having on your life, what happens if you don't fix those things. I go the exact opposite direction. Tell me the good parts of those behaviors. Tell me how those behaviors are serving you. Tell me the needs that those behaviors are meeting. So, anger, instant attention, instant authority. People listen. You get your point across. You say things that you aren't otherwise able to say unless you're angry. So anger gives you your voice. Okay, let's talk about the addict part. Well, helps me numb, cope, and escape. Um, Gosh, when I jump on that cam site and the woman's telling me how great I am, I do feel significant. I do feel a sense of control. I do feel a sense of power. I do feel a sense of release and escape. So, oh, okay, wait a minute. Like now we see that these behaviors are doing something for you. Lying keeps you from getting in trouble, keeps the behavior alive, keeps you from hurting someone else's feelings. The reason I start there, Hannah, is because I want to plant the seed very early on that all behavior is need seeking behavior. What
Mm.
you call your problem, I call your solution.
Yeah.
You just need a better one. These are patterns and habits that evolved over time to become your solution. And most people look at it through the lens of they're bad, they're diseased, this is evil, my religious brothers, this is the devil. Well, wait a minute. This devil that's giving you a sense of significance and autonomy and making you feel good about yourself when you feel bad and helping you alter your brain chemistry so you can deal with stress better. And you've got that relief finally after your incredibly stressful day. And by the way, started in childhood, rooted in trauma. That's the devil? That's the disease? No, no, no. So, what parts work does, Hannah, is it's non pathologizing. We're not demonizing those parts. We are leading those parts to positive outcomes. And that, I think, is the maybe not the, but a future gold standard in psychotherapy and high performance. We already know that talking to yourself in the third person increases results in the high performance space. So I think this stuff is the future. I love talking about it. Maybe I come back and we dive into the parts work full steam ahead because I'm kind of getting in it at the end. Maybe we'll tease this for another one. But it is groundbreaking, it is revolutionary, and it is life changing. And I'm so happy to share it with you.
That is such a brilliant reframe. I think parts work is so valuable. Um, I love the framework that Dr. Schwartz created there with, the way that you put it too of we're not trying to get rid of. We're not trying to shame or hide or cut off a piece of who we are. We are learning to love our whole selves. And the hiding in and of itself is you had it right in your bio. It's a form of self-hatred. And so how do we learn to love? And I feel like that's what you are putting out into the world is how it's not how do you fix your broken horribleness? It's how do you love yourself truly? How do you love yourself back to wholeness?
Yes. Yes. And for my business-minded guys who might be thinking we're getting a little woo-woo, let me say to you, how do you operationalize love for self? Doing so produces better performers, better people, better fathers, better husbands. So, little business spin on that love thing. How do we operationalize self-leadership and self-love?
And even, I mean, self-love goes with acceptance, self-belief, right? Self-leadership, like you said. But I mean, even that, when we think of true self-confidence, you can call it whatever you want. It comes back to self-love, but we can also see it in these other lights. That's what
Correct.
allows you to be confident. That's what confident. That's what allows you to be in integrity. That's what allows you to be, again, authentic. This,
It's your fuel, it's your fire. It's such an important part. And for those of you who aren't ready for self-love, self-leadership. That's sometimes a more accessible term. A lot of my military guys, like Craig, kumbaya, like you're gonna go outside and hug a tree. And like, what? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. If you want to, go ahead. But it's a hard pill to swallow. So we start with self-leadership, but it always ends up with self-love.
Mm. Well, Craig, if people are listening to this and either they need your help or they know someone who would benefit greatly from your work, how can they get a hold of you? And where can they find more about you?
Well, for 13 years, it's been the same answer, Hannah. It's been mindfulhabithelp.com. And my podcast for men struggling with compulsive sexual behavior is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. And for my brothers and sisters struggling with everything else and want more of a broader context, that's my new podcast. I'm named by our friend Brent, by the way, Patterns of Power. And I'll get you all those links for that so you can put them in the notes.
Well, thank you so much, Craig, for being here. Like you said, all of those links will be in the show notes for people to be able to just grab. I truly, truly hope that this has been helpful in a lot of ways. For a lot of people, you are doing such important, impactful work. And I appreciate having you here. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Hannah. Love it.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.